Hello fellow string benders from the internet. Today I'm gonna explain to you the end solo, the live solo of Stairway to the Skies by Within Temptation. I got a lot of requests for this one, so why not? Here we go. As you could hear in the intro, this is not a typical shred solo. This solo is more about the notes and the way you play these notes. Because I think that a solo isn't only about which notes and how fast you play those notes, but it's also how you deliver those notes, how you play the melodies, how you interpret those melodies. This solo isn't on the album, and if I remember correctly, I think that this idea started out in a rehearsal or something. I think that I was just fooling around with this melody and started to improvise a little bit, and the rest of the guys and girl thought it was cool, so we incorporated that into the set. It started out as a full improvisation in the beginning, but you know, after you've played it 1,000 times, some small ideas you know, get into your system, and these days, you know, I still play some variations here and there, but it's globally the same. This solo starts out with a pretty simple melody. Technically this isn't that difficult, but I think it's very important to put some emotion into it, because that's when a melody like this becomes alive. If I would play the same melody zombie style, then it sounds like this, and it's quite boring. It's quite robotic. So try to experiment with techniques like vibrato, slides, hammer-ons, pull-offs, finger tapping, nose tapping, whatever, you know, anything you can think of, just to add a lot of personality in a melody like this. So one of the things I really like to do is something like this. So it's basically a slide from a higher note, a random higher note, to the target note. So you need to know that you're gonna end at this note over here, and then you just pick a note, a ghost note basically, and you slide it to the target note. Where you start that higher note doesn't matter that much. You could theoretically do it here, but you know, practically it takes a lot of time to reach that target note, but let's try. Works, but it sounds a little bit ridiculous, but you know, you can experiment with this kind of stuff. Another thing that I sometimes do live, you know, whenever, depends on, you know, the position of the moon, I guess, is a little thrill. That is basically a hammer-on and a pull-off. But it gives a little melody like that a bit more life. I always try to play very organically, in the sense that I'm not afraid to be a little bit sloppy here and there, because I like the, you know, the dirtiness of maybe strings sounding which aren't supposed to sound, and otherwise it becomes too clinical for me. And one of the techniques I use a lot is the rake. And with the rake you use your guitar pick and really dive into the strings while muting them. That's pretty important. And I use my index finger to mute the strings. But if you rake with your guitar pick across the strings, you get this sound. The sound itself sounds ridiculous. The sound itself sounds ridiculous. But in context, it sounds like this. another slide. Haha! If I would play the same part without any sloppiness, just the notes, it's quite boring, quite zombie-ish. It's still the same melody, exactly the same melody, but in this case I don't think that anyone would like it. And this is how I play the ending of that little part of the solo. So I end that bit with a high note and I add some vibrato to it. And that's a technique that a lot of beginners have difficulties with. It's one thing to play a nice in-tune string bend, and it's another thing to play a nice in-control vibrato, and it's a completely different thing to combine those things together. And next up is a lick in a scale. The scale is A minor, by the way, so all naturals, no flats and no sharps. And speaking about the key of this song, the chords of this song are A minor, G, D with a F sharp in the bass, F and G. Why am I telling you these chords? Well, first of all, I think it's always important to know which chords are in the song, especially if you have to play a solo over them. Second of all is that the next lick incorporates those chords. It's quite a classic pull-off heavy metal guitar lick, but I shift my highest note from the A to the G to the F sharp. So it's a pretty standard thing, but it works. One thing you need to make sure is that the notes don't ring out, because that sounds nasty. Let me show you. Etc. You get the idea. So what you need to do is you have to lift some fingers here and there. I'll do it very slowly. So make sure that you're very critical to your own playing and that you keep listening. So we've played that A, that G and that F sharp to follow the chords. Now the next lick starts on that F, the F of the chord over here. Maybe you've already seen it, there are a lot of pull-offs going on. The ending of the solo contains a lot of double stops, and I've already talked about double stops a lot in the past. This part is something like this, but as I said, you know, I don't always play the same thing every night, but this is a variation. And on to the very last part of the solo, and as a matter of fact, it's usually the very last part of the gig as well. You know, me standing in front of the audience, audience happy, me happy, everyone happy, you know, great times. And right now I'm gonna play this solo slow, and I'm adding some taps. So I hope that you enjoyed this lesson and that you learned something from it. And I hope that you realize now that the solo isn't just about the notes, but it's also about how the notes are played. And the way I play a certain melody can be completely different from how you would play a melody. And that's the cool thing, I think. You know, it's all about personality and stuff. And therefore, I suggest to really experiment with, you know, the techniques that I mentioned, like vibrato, hammer-on, pull-off, slide, finger tap, you know, all these kind of things. It can result in some really great things. For now, have a good day, have a good night, have a good morning, have a good afternoon. See you later. Take care and bye-bye.